Well, it's not every day that Riot's social media memes become the source of important information, but somehow it happened, and now I hope there is not an intern in trouble. You see, over the years, Riot always had a funny relationship with leaks. Because every time it happened, there were some people who brought up the theory that they were leaking stuff on purpose. Aren't leaks a really good marketing strategy anyway? Well, no, they always ruin quite a lot of pre-planning for reveals. I mean, we all remember Briar's feet. But last week, something really interesting happened. During one of those moments where companies post memes on their social media accounts to look young, I guess, the League of Legends account posted one of those iceberg memes with League of Legends. And it unironically might have just spoiled the next champion. Or at the very least, it fits into a giant puzzle which the community started putting together. And so, even though this is not technically a leak, it is Riot's official post that kinda leaked something, I guess. And that's because on top of this meme, ever since the beginning of the new Noxian season, people started noticing things. Of course, this escalated further with the new card game, and now, yeah, I think people figured out what's coming. And I'll be honest, some of these details go back to the Mageseeker game. And I'm not taking credits for those, I honestly forgot. So, without further ado, let's get into all of this. This all started with the cinematic which we got at the beginning of the Noxian season. This is where Mel got back to Noxus after Arcane, LeBlanc noticed her arrival, and Vladimir was mad at LeBlanc for ignoring her. All while LeBlanc was focusing on that. Here, the initial theories were simple. Some people thought that this was related to the demonic compendium. Some people thought this looked like a dagger with an eye, kinda like Naafiri. But some also believed that this could be a brand new darkin. Now, of course, on this channel we talked about LeBlanc's and Mordekaiser's story quite a few times. So we are not repeating that, so just know that LeBlanc likes to collect powerful artifacts so she can eventually defeat Mordekaiser with it. However, as the Atakhan storyline was revealed, some people realized that this darkin might be a bit special. So of course, next, we got the Mordekaiser comic, where we essentially learned how Atakhan was created. Long story short, Atakhan was a demon that stalked the plains around the Noxai tribes. It attacked Mordekaiser and it was able to kill Mordekaiser's general called Katashli, who could also be considered Mordekaiser's friend. But in the end, Mordekaiser was able to defeat Atakhan as well. Now, seeing the potential of this defeated demon, as well as his deceased general, using the knowledge of death magic, which he knew quite a bit about because of the entire faith, wielding the dark magic surrounding death, he convinced his sorcerers to bind Atakhan to Katashli and use his body as a vessel. Thus, these two would be merged and they would be bound to a helmet, which was in Mordekaiser's possession, and thus the newly resurrected Atakhan was bound to Mordekaiser's will. The important thing here is that the newly resurrected Atakhan was bound to an item. Remember this because in theory this is not too different to how the darkin work. On top of this, after Mordekaiser died and was resurrected, Atakhan still remained bound to him, but after he got defeated the second time by LeBlanc, Atakhan was now up for the grabs. And so LeBlanc took the helmet and she released him. As to why, well, all of that comes into play in the next part. From LeBlanc's new voice lines, we learned that she is after a darkin. And if you connect all the pieces, we might be able to know why that is the case. You see, we now know that part of LeBlanc's power might come from Targon. Because we know that Targonians and the early Noxai tribes had some kind of a relationship. It's mostly one where Rakor from Targon shunned the Noxai. And so there is a good reason to believe that LeBlanc's golden magic essentially comes from the Celestials. The interesting theory is that everything kinda makes a loop here, because Celestials use bodies for vessels. The Celestials were also the ones who gave mortals the power to bind the darkin inside their weapons. And now LeBlanc is looking for such a weapon, so she could potentially learn more about this binding magic. Not to mention that in the Mbessa book, and this is a minor spoiler, we are talking about in theory, the binding of magic into someone's body. So whatever is happening with the binding magic, that is what LeBlanc is interested in. But truth be told, even after we got the voice lines, we didn't really have any details on this. But the story kept developing in the background, with the next part coming up in the Demon's Hand. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone has seen my playthrough of the Demon's Hand minigame, right? But in case you haven't, this minigame has some heavy lore. And when it got released, it even got its own article where it was teased what this was about. So, after Mordekaiser's second defeat, 1,000 years later, LeBlanc grabbed Atakhan and she decided to free him from his imprisonment. When she does so, Atakhan can be seen confused, because now he is in a totally different place in a completely changed world. Although he is still bound by the same demonic hunger for carnage and bloodshed. All of this is shown in the initial comic from the minigame. Here we can see that the now released Atakhan is wandering the lands around Noxus. First he is seen in the Noshtai Valley, which I couldn't find on the map, so I'm gonna assume that is a new place. Then he is atop the peaks of Elmund. Now I swear I heard this name somewhere before, but again it seems to be a new place. Then we can see him in the forests of Quel'Thal, which is a place just south of Noxus. And he also potentially appears in a mysterious new place. Well, this place is identical to the Great Grass Ocean, as Mordekaiser calls it, which pretty much confirmed that all of this is happening in Atakhan's head, because this is a scene from the past. And this gets confirmed later, with this specific place being here to evoke Atakhan's memories. And that's all because LeBlanc wants to sate the demon's hunger to get it under control. And the reason for that actually comes out of the minigame. But before that, I very quickly want to point out that a lot of people got confused as to why Atakhan looks different here. And honestly, I think that this is all likely happening while he is weakened. You'll see that there are some big illusionary shenanigans happening. And so while in the other comic he was shown as he was being released, well, that scene might be happening on the outside. While here we might be dealing with the illusionary Atakhan that's been hungering for 1,000 years. It is a bit complicated, but I have no other explanations. Anyway, this is where the minigame kicks in. During this game, the players are playing from the perspective of Atakhan and Katashli, who are obviously merged together. And we play against a stranger who, spoiler alert, is LeBlanc, with the scene pretty much confirming that all of this is happening in Atakhan's head. And because their mind is fractured, similar to someone like Varus, who is actually 3 entities in one, here we start as Katashli, but as we sow carnage, Atakhan eventually comes out during the full moon. And again, this is all happening because LeBlanc wants to evoke the demon's memories. And by using the runes, which act as the jokers during the Balatro part of the game, she was able to achieve this. This is why, during the game, LeBlanc is asking a lot of questions about Mordekaiser's and Atakhan's past. She wants to learn how Mordekaiser died, how was he able to defy death, how he made the sorcerers bind him to his armor, and how he even managed to resurrect Atakhan. Specifically, LeBlanc is asking a lot of questions about what it was like for Katashli to be bound to Atakhan. How did the two share a body? How did their memories blend together? And what was the binding process like for the victims? Again, going back to the potential relationship with Targon, it really seems like LeBlanc is trying to figure out the entire binding process. And by the end of the story mode in this game, LeBlanc pretty much reveals what exactly happened here. She used the runes of the game to cast illusions. She even directly mentions that the grass fields around them and their own appearances are illusions created by the runes. And that is all with the sole purpose of suppressing the demon at first so she could talk to Katashli, and then over time she would slowly sate Atakhan's demonic hunger. Technically, you are sating this hunger for carnage by just dealing a lot of damage in the game, which resulted in the demon losing its hunger and being able to be bound to the Black Rose. And so, in the final part, we get a comic where LeBlanc reveals herself, she binds the demon to the Black Rose, and she breaks the illusion. revealing that this entire time they were in the same room which we've seen in the very first cinematic of this season. On top of this, LeBlanc revealed that she evoked Atakhan to get information out of him. Because apparently, Atakhan knew the location of a darkin weapon. This makes sense because again, Mordekaiser was interested in those kinds of artifacts. And so was LeBlanc. And so now that he was bound to the Black Rose, Atakhan obeyed, and he revealed that the next darkin is here. Now yes, in my original playthrough, the comic bugged out and I actually didn't see that place. But finally, I got a chance to talk about this. And well, yes, that does look like the gates around the Placidium of Navori. In other words, Ionia. This is funny because Ionia already had quite a few Darkin. They got Varus, and then Zolani, and there is also the Darkin fan known as Pra somewhere in Ionia. And now there seems to be a fourth one, which is where, finally, the social media post comes in. Because while we learned that we will be dealing with a new Darkin, we still had no idea who the Darkin is or what kind of a weapon it could be. But then the iceberg meme was randomly posted, and there it mentioned a glaive. Why? I have no idea. But I can tell you for certain that this was not mentioned anywhere else. So we can assume that the person who made this meme thought that the players would already know that we are dealing with a darkin glaive. But somehow that was not revealed yet, and so this post kinda spoiled it. Which is where something else that's funny also happened. You see, some people got sad that they thought that the next darkin might be Zolani, because that is quite a legendary darkin in the entire Darkin saga. And of course it can't be her because she was not bound to a glaive. But some other people also got confused because technically we do have a Darkin spear, but I guess that's not a glaive, with the Darkin spear being bound somewhere between the Freljord and the Demacia. So I'm gonna assume that's a different one. Which leaves us with one last potential Darkin. And of course, I am talking about Valiva, Varus' sister. Now, this Darkin has been teased in the past numerous times, with one of these teases even happening in the Mage Seeker game. Again, I totally forgot about this. But the story of the 5 Darkin has been circling around for a while. And it was once again brought up here, where they mentioned Aatrox, Rast, Varus, Naafiri, and one last Darkin, which was teased with the line, "One mandate declared loud in hate." And while there are a lot more than just 5 Darkin around Runeterra now, it seems like these 5 are the most powerful that we know about, with the 5th one possibly being Varus' sister, who might also be the Darkin Glaive, which of course means she might become the next champion. Of course, this might also indirectly mean that the next season of League of Legends might be in Ionia. And I'll be honest, if all of this becomes true, I'm gonna be confused just a little bit. Because technically, Varus' story ends in Shurima, where he is looking for his sister. I know, this story is very old now. I think we're talking about like 5 years old or something like that. So, either this story is getting retconned, or Varus has dementia.